This is the third of our little films of the Manx Railway. This one reflects the goings on in 2008, and here we are in an unchanging network but a very varied scene at Port St Mary for the early morning commuter train. We were very fortunate to make 2 visits to the island in 2008, coincident with the TT and the Manx Grand Prix at the end of August. And the end of this film reflects the latter visit. Meanwhile, number 13 reminds us that it's early morning and there's commuter duties to perform. And off she goes towards Douglas. A real coal fire welcomes us to the workshops in Douglas, even though it's early June. This is the 10:20, just leaving Douglas for Port Erin. Practice week Wednesday. Got a number of youngsters on board. We seem to film the old stationary steam engine and the couple of steam domes up on the shelf each year that we come, but they never fail to fascinate. This is the wonderful lining out that we saw for the first time last year on the locomotive Caledonia number 4, and it looks just as good as the day it was first done. This is Fenella and Caledonia. Fenella in the foreground and Caledonia nearest the door. And this is CH Wood, which according to one of the engineers I've spoken to is being fettled again. It's The boiler was giving trouble last year, and it's now obviously been reboilered, but it's still being sorted. And it's actually been repainted by the look of it, or at least the paint's been touched up where it would have been damaged during the engineering work. Over the years I've been calling C.H. Wood by that name, but it's actually G.H. Wood looking closely, and G.H. Wood was an original director of the original railway, hence the naming in his honour. So there we are, we've put the record straight, it's G.H. Wood. G for George, presumably. Anyway, he's looking pretty tidy in his green waistcoat. Nothing much changes here either. The old freight wagon is still there, slightly more rotten. And the coach hasn't moved. And that's probably the underframes of Maitland, which is being reboilered, and behind it is the green diesel, which does the yard maintenance, the yard duty. Lucky to get a glimpse of Kissack as she finishes her tour of duty and is run back into the shed quietly. Back again at a rather noisy Port St Mary as the Port Erin train leaves. Here we take another look at the early morning commuter train from a slightly different angle. The gentlemen with the briefcase are no longer here. Maybe that was a one-day appearance, 3-line whip, but there are a couple of passengers taking advantage of this service, which is peculiar to the TT fortnight. Now we have a few images of our journey via Laxey to the summit of Snaefell. The railway is under reconstruction between Laxey and Ramsey, so Snaefell on this occasion, preceded by Laxey, was the extent of our journey on the tram system. What are you doing? Scrappy dog. Scrappy dog. And here we have the unique, but to us at least familiar, sight of the two-coach tram set, 2,036 feet above sea level, and the view back down the line as it skirts the middle of the hill there, and the mountain road which constitutes the TT course through Bungalow Crossing and up over Halewood Rise. It never ceases to be windy up here, as you could undoubtedly hear in the background. And a single coach train makes its slow way back down the hill and crosses one which is bound for the summit just a few yards further down. This whole line from Laxey to the summit took only 7 months to build. Nowadays we'd still be talking about it 7 years after it was originally conceived. That's the difference in the Victorian outlook and those of the new Elizabethan age.
Hey, I got it. So trams are passive.
You have to stop where you can get.
Well, they sent us to Leicester.
It's not very nice, like.
And then we had to hunt around for somewhere.
It's on Tuesday evening and I'm just waiting for the so-called commuter train, the 5:30 from Douglas back to, in our case, Port St Mary. There's one coach here, but there's a train to be pulled in from somewhere, and then we should be underway. The sentiments expressed in my commentary a moment ago proved in fact to be a vain hope. The train did arrive, as you'll see in a moment or two, but it had caused fires on the line and was substantially delayed, so we completed our journey to Port St Mary by bus. Oh, she's topped and tailed. It's a much longer train. Number 4 on the back. lock on the back, looking resplendent. And the passengers disembarking. This panoramic view, starting with our hotel at the railway crossing, were taken on the final day of our stay on the 9th of June. In a moment or two you'll see the line curving off in the Douglas direction under control of a single arm signal. But after the completion of this almost 360-degree panorama, the train will pursue its journey. At the midpoint of this panorama, you'll notice the rump of a Celtic cross, of which there are many examples on this island. Behind the hill in the background is the very well preserved Manx village of Cregneash, which is owned and operated by the Manx Museum. With the help of the long lens on the camera, we can see Milner's Tower on Bradda Head, which is actually in the next village, Port Erin, the terminus of the railway from Douglas. And finally we get to the real business of the day and take our film of the Douglas bound train crossing the road crossing and off into the 17.5 mile trip to Douglas. and about half an hour later here's the Port Erin bound train viewed from just up the hill towards Cregneash as it arrives in Port Erin itself, through the modern bungalow estate, past the sports ground and into Port Erin station. So we'll make our way down there and actually film the train at the terminus. And here she is at Port Erin. She's waiting there ready to pilot the 2:15 train back to Douglas. Looks as though they've been refurbishing some of the original Manx Railway railings there. There's a pile of those at Port St Mary station, but here they're in situ and they've been repainted, so that's good to see. These various displays are in the waiting room and ticket office at Port Erin. This is a three-dimensional map of the original island railway network with photographs of each and every little byway station. I think this is a wonderful notice. Sea bathing for the working classes. On and after Sunday morning next, each succeeding Sunday with a view of according the benefit of sea bathing. The train will leave the following station for Fleetwood and Blackpool. This is a model of Mona's Queen, which was a steam packet boat in 1972. It doesn't operate now, so whether it was sold on or served its useful working life here and was then scrapped, I don't know. I remember the Manx Maid, which preceded that, but Mona's Queen, I don't know. These are in the waiting room at Port Erin station. Back to Hutchinson again. She's due to leave in a quarter of an hour, so I think probably the routine check has been completed. Still being cold, I think, or at least the fire is being made up. It's a very small bunker on these locos, but obviously enough for this 17.5 mile trip to Douglas. These are the Port Erin shop fronts. Little changed over the years, I guess. Maybe the ground floor, but not the upper floors. That's the Station Hotel Port Erin, as against the one in Port St Mary where we've been staying. That's the Port Erin station building, obviously. Getting dirtier, so the fire's doing its bit. And there's the waiting train. So the locomotive makes its way alongside its train to the points and comes back and rejoins its train and then runs bunker first towards Douglas, which from a photographic standpoint is rather disappointing, but I don't really see anybody investing in a turntable at this end of the line for the sake of aesthetics. Off she goes in the Douglas direction, across the road crossing, and the gates were closed behind her. And that signals the end of our little record of the activity during TT Fortnight 2008. But we should be back in August for the Manx Grand Prix, and maybe we'll take some more pictures. True to our word, here we are, and G.H. Wood is here as he has been for the bulk of the last 100 years. This is G.H. Wood after a number of periods of boiler maintenance, but he or she is obviously back in service and looking good. Waiting to take the afternoon train back to Douglas from Port Erin. After leaving Colby Station, the line sweeps round in a wide arc to the right towards Ballabeg, and the steam in the distance is evidence of that event about to reenact itself. This is a familiar scene, at least on this film, but there's always something subtly different about the goings-on at this station, and indeed about the goings-on on the Isle of Man. That's what makes it such a splendid place to visit. And here comes Kissack on the afternoon train. I always seem to film the last wisp of smoke as if I can't let go of the scene, but let go we must, because this is the end of our 2008 experience of Isle of Man Railways. But we shall be back. And here we are for a very brief visit in September 2009, standing at Port Erin station, and coming in from Douglas in the north is a rather unusual engine, or at least a very familiar engine, masquerading as Thomas the Tank, and you'll see which locomotive it is when she arrives at the platform with an excited bunch of passengers. Well, the sun shines brightly on the Manx Grand Prix for 2010, and here we are back again, the familiar sight of Douglas signal box and Loco Hutchinson sitting in the exit platform waiting to take its train south to Port Erin. Beautiful view with the station entrance in the background, and she finally makes her departure. Hutchinson is then replaced by another of our favourites in its green livery, G.H. Wood, being prepared at Douglas Station for its exit to Port Erin. But I am about to exit and take my annual trip round the works buildings to see what's happened in the year which has intervened since we were last on the splendid Isle of Man. In the works, everything changes, but nothing seems to change. It's timeless in here. This is the boiler from the Dubs built loco Caledonia. Obviously well and truly removed from its underframes. And this is Kissack. It always seems to be in pieces. It was running last year. And behind it is Lock. I can hear G.H. Wood just about to leave, so I'll nip back out again. There's the familiar wheel lathe. Unfortunately, nothing's running on it today. And that will be the cab of Caledonia on the flatbed wagon there. And interestingly, some of the belting is being replaced. The old line belting and shafting system is still running there. You can see the gearing mechanism, and then that comes down to actually drive the wheel lathe. So that's still connected to the central prime mover. And here's the original Manchester built steam driven prime mover, which I think these days runs more as an exhibition than as a functional piece of equipment, but all the drive mechanism is still in place. This is the boilerless Kissack again. We saw Sutherland last year being worked on because of poor steaming, and that still appears to be the case. These are the underframes of the second loco in the shed here. This is the rear of the loco. It's actually loco number 11, which I think from memory is Kissack, but I may be wrong. We are now in the other bay of the running shed, which seems to contain some of the old unrestored rolling stock, plus a couple of wagons there, and I can see a sheeted loco at the end of the line nearest the door. We'll have a look at that in a moment. I don't know what loco this one is, but I'll find out. This is the front end of number 1 with the cab shell laid on the top. I've never seen as many dismembered locomotives. There's the back end of the Wickham trailer and number 1 in the background. This must be the one they've been redoing over the years. It's finally come to fruition. Wonderful. This is actually a coach number 35, which is set up as a bar coach, an entertainment coach, and is used on special train configurations. It's beautiful blue leather button back seats. It was in splendid condition, it really was. And finally we're back in the coach rebuilding shop where we've been on previous occasions. Not much has happened in here. And now back to Port Erin, where we're fortunate to catch our old friend G.H. Wood leaving on a mid-morning train. fortunate again as we return from Cregneash and look down over the settlement of Port Erin to notice the departure of the early afternoon train from Port Erin. This time it was hauled by our old friend Hutchison, and it calls into the Port Mary station and then continues on its journey through Colby to Douglas and the terminus. And now she crosses the Port Erin to Douglas Road on the level crossing and heads off round the bend in the direction of Colby. And we leave the Isle of Man for another year. Well, if my previous observations seemed like the last rites being placed on our visits to the Isle of Man, the end of 2010 there, nothing could be further from the truth. We're back again. It's 2012, it's the end of the Manx Grand Prix Festival, and here we are, still at Port Erin, but on a day of fairly intensive timetabling. Here's the bay platform being used as the exit platform for trains to Douglas, and we're now waiting on the crossing point alongside a fairly excitable young man and his father, waiting the arrival of Hutchinson drawing a train down from Douglas, and she will pull into the normal platform, and then the train in the outgoing platform will disappear in the Douglas direction, and then Hutchinson will manoeuvre around her train and place her train in that same platform. All very exciting and interesting, because it's the first time that I've seen that siding there in use. Anyway, here she comes.
It's coming! We can see it! It is! Nanny, can you see it? It's coming!
And this is another familiar locomotive, Kissack, heading up the Douglas-bound train, simmering away there in the bay platform, being serviced, oiled, ready for the off.
I'll leave up the whistle for you before ready. Whee!
Even though Kissack has yet to leave the station in the Douglas direction, Hutchinson is arriving light engine and will wait at the points whilst Kissack leaves, and then we shall have the pleasure of watching the departure of Kissack and Hutchinson waiting, so two engines active in the station at the same time. So now Hutchinson makes ready to draw her train up the line and down into the bay platform. The points are now being reset and she will start her journey just that short distance into the bay platform. So we're back where we started this little visit, with a train standing in the bay platform waiting to make its journey to Douglas. But that'll be a little while yet, so we'll retreat gracefully and see if anything's changed on the seafront in Port Erin. I'm absolutely certain that nothing will have changed. The station building, the shops there in the main street of Port Erin, the museum in the distance, and the single engine shed, and a view of the station back from alongside the museum. And there's our train. I was incorrect in assuming the status quo. The tower on Bradda Head is encased in scaffolding, so something's changing.